Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another Sree COVID-19 call. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and this is our daily global conversation with fabulous people, fascinating folks around the world. This is your chance to talk about what's happening and to get your insights as we talk to interesting people who will help us understand what's happening with all these aspects of the COVID-19 crisis. My name is Sree Sreenivasan, and I'm honored to lead this conversation with all of you. Please tell us where you're watching from. Please tag a friend. Please share this conversation so that people can join us, your friends, your family. There's somebody out there who would benefit from this conversation. I am the visiting professor of digital innovation at Stony Brook University, named for Marshall Loeb, the great Fortune magazine editor, and I've learned so much in the year and a half that I've been doing that work. And part of what I've been doing is understanding that we have to get people to talk. And I'm able to do that because of this kind of technology. We're live right now on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube, and on LinkedIn. So please go to those platforms. Please tag your friends and please hit share right now. Let's see who is joining us. Please tag your friends. Here is Jonathan, who says he's watching from East Village. Thank you, Jonathan's always here. Daryl's watching from Richmond Hill, the most religiously diversified neighborhood in the U.S. That's awesome. And Rose is watching, and Rose and Renee Edelman are also watching. And Rose is the producer of this show, along with Vandana Menon, and both of them are tweeting. Rose is Rose Horowitz 31. And Vandana is Vandana_Menon. Please follow both of them. I see Steve Taylor is here from Philadelphia. So happy to have you. Please tag your friends. Please hit share so that more and more folks can participate in this. I also want to welcome Arlene, who's watching from Inwood on the upper part of Manhattan. We have Cherry watching from Trivandrum or Thiruvananthapuram, Kerala, where my parents are. So grateful to have you here, Cherry. Everyone, please tag a friend, please hit share, retweet, etc., so we can bring them on. Today, we have a wonderful conversation with a great thinker and leader in Hitendra Wadhwa. Professor Wadhwa is a professor at Columbia Business School, and he, among other things, he thinks about leadership, and he teaches classes in leadership. He's taught more than 10,000 MBAs and executives about leadership skills. And so we're going to talk about what makes for great leadership in the middle of this crisis. He is in India. I am here in New York, and we'll have a very meaningful and deep conversation with all of you participating and watching with us. Post your questions. Who are leaders you admire? We want to hear from you. We also want you to follow him on Twitter. He's Hitendra W, Hitendraw, as you can see on the screen. And he's got a fabulous newsletter, hitendra.com. Go to the website and sign up for his newsletter. Before I bring him on, I want to make sure we pay some bills. And to do that, we have sponsors. And I'm so grateful to our sponsors, and our sponsor tonight, FrontlineFoodTrucks.com. FrontlineFoodTrucks.com. They're part of the NY Food Truck Association, as it feeds frontline healthcare workers. FrontlineFoodTrucks.com is delivering donated food and beverages to New York City hospital staff 7 days a week, starting with NYU Langone in Manhattan and Brooklyn. Some of the food companies include La Colombe, Sweet Green, Chobani, Pipcorn Heirloom Snacks, Kind Bar, Blue Bottle Coffee, The Donut Pub, Belgian Boys. And Ben Goldberg, the founder and president of the Food Trucks Association, is trying to raise enough funds to deliver food to all NYC hospitals. What a wonderful project that he is doing. And I want to tell you that this ad has been paid for by an anonymous third-party donor. And by paying for this, the money goes directly, that every penny that's donated goes directly to the food truck workers and to the hospital folks so that they can get great food, and no money for this ad is taken away from that effort. So if you would like to be a sponsor of our shows, please jump in, please let us know. We have very reasonable ads, as you can see right here on the screen. very reasonable. Maybe you don't have something you want to sell, but you have a nonprofit or a small business you'd like to support, or maybe you wish somebody a happy birthday or an anniversary. Here's your chance. Please drop me a line, sree@sree.net, SREE@SREE.net. So now we're ready for our show. Please tag your friends, please hit share, and let's get this conversation going. Let's see who else has joined us from around the world. Renee says hi to Janet Adelberg, Davis, and Teddy. Who else is here? Rose says, new for the show, I'll be tweeting tonight, and Vandana Menon will be reposting my tweets in the Facebook comment stream. Why? We want folks who are watching to retweet some of the tweets so that we can amplify this great work that Sree is doing during this crisis. The hashtag Sree COVID-19 call, Sree COVID-19 call. Marilyn Zayfert's watching from Staten Island. Marilyn is a great hero of mine. What she did after Hurricane Superstorm Sandy hit Staten Island by using technology to bring together her community is legend. And she's become a great expert on social media. And now she's doing the same thing during COVID-19. Please find her. Please follow her. Lisa says hello. Thank you, Lisa. Everyone who's here, we're so grateful to you. Rajendra says, among those who showed leadership and coverage, Enrique Mandetta, the health minister of Brazil, and Li Weiang, the Chinese whistleblower doctor. You can hear our dog. She is thirsty for some water. I'm hoping that somebody in my family will step up and pour some water for her. Otherwise, I'll have to step away at this time. But this is the fun part of the show. We're on lockdown instead of being in a studio. But here we are. Ashok Sharma is watching, and he is in Trivandrum in Kerala. And we are so grateful to everyone who's here with us at this time. So without further ado, let me present to you our guest for the hour, Professor Hitendra Wadhwa, who is watching right now and is here. Hi, Hitendra.
Hello, Sree. How are you?
Great to have you with us. I'm sorry it's under these circumstances. You are a New Yorker, but right now you are where?
I am in New Delhi, in India.
And you're there because you wanted to be in a place where you can be with your family, you can write, you can think at this time when everybody else's world is kind of all been shaken apart, right? Like we're all in this new world.
You know, I mean, everybody's lot to bear at a time like this, but I have to say that I feel very blessed. I feel very fortunate. I happen to be in New York. I spend a primary part of my professional life, work life in New York, but I did decide several years back between my wife and I to raise my daughter out of India by having her go to school at the American school here. And therefore, I've spent a week or so every month in India. I happen to have just returned to New York a few weeks ago when I thought things were going to be staying relatively stable. And then something within me just felt that no, in fact, things are probably going to go on a downward spiral. And my daughter might need me at this hour, even though I just spent the last few days with her. She might need me to be there, at a time when her world was also crumbling down. And so I took the next flight back to India. And sure enough, within a couple of days of that, the Indian government banned international flights. Within a few days of that, the Indian government announced a national lockdown of 1.3 billion people. And of course, a lot of cancellations of proms and high school graduation, etc., for my daughter here in India. And so, it has been for me a moment where I'm, on the one hand, very serene and at peace and in a state of quietude under the quarantine to do writing and reflecting, but also in a position to help, gratefully so, help support my family.
And that's wonderful, the way you've described that process. Paula is watching from Tallahassee. By the way, as I name these places, let us know if you've been to, of course, you've been to Florida. I don't know if you've been to Tallahassee. Kerala, have you been?
Yeah, of course. It's one of the very beautiful states of India.
Okay, let's see. Anna's watching from Canberra in Australia.
That's one of the places I would be really keen to visit. Australia is just a little bit beyond arm's reach, so it's been a challenge thus far to find the time.
And you can see Geeta's watching from Memphis, Tennessee.
Ah, yes. This is isn't this close to Elvis Presley, if I'm
Yeah,
right.
Memphis. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And Nitin's watching from Dharamshala. Tell people about Dharamshala because we have an international audience that may not know exactly its significance in the world.
Yeah. Well, Dharamsala is where India, invited the Dalai Lama to basically find a home for himself after he and his flock from Tibet, essentially fled to find safe haven. And so there is a large community of Tibetans who have, kind of settled down in the Dharamsala area and have blessed it with their, really cool vibe. It's a place of pilgrimage for many, drawn to Tibetan Buddhism. My parents, my father, who's in the Indian police service, used to be the head of police, of that area several decades back. And both he and my mom, for many decades, would fondly recall their time with the Dalai Lama as well.
Wow, what a blessing to have that in your family. That's incredible. We have here, Spin It Social says, what an intuitive and wonderful dad. Sure, your daughter is so thankful to have you with her. And these are moments that we, despite all the inconvenience, we should be grateful for, as you said, what we have, including being able to be with our family. We see a lot of people complaining about being stuck inside with their families, but this is time we'll never get again.
True. And one of the things that really compelled me to make sure that I just took that flight and came back is, there is research to show that when we think about our memories, often what encodes our memories is our emotions. And at a time when you are experiencing heightened emotion, it is quite likely that those memories are going to stick with you. And now, what would I want for my daughter, for the decades ahead, and hopefully, in her future life, when she has her mind gravitate back to this very emotion-charged time in her life, would I want those to be uplifting, heroic, positive emotions, or ones of despair and gloom and uncertainty and loss? And so I just felt like, okay, I'm here to help support her in encoding a positive emotional response to the moment.
Thank you. Andrea says, I can relate to the duality that Hitendra refers to, calm and peace, but uncertainty.
Yeah, it's a beautiful way of thinking about it, Andrea. One way I like to sometimes envision it, perhaps you're equally aware of that metaphor, is sort of like a potter's wheel, right? And you take that wheel which is spinning, and the more you look at it from the outside, it's spinning fast. But the more you come close to the center, and then when you're actually at the center, well, that center is not moving at all. Right. And so there you have that duality of, on the one hand, a part of us, the center, which can stay in a state of just tranquility and unconditional grace. And yet on the outside, we are engaged in a world that is constantly in flux.
And that's not easy for most people to understand or deal with, right?
It's the modern world has not been, to your point, Sree, designed to really investigate the inner life, right? It has been more designed for us to maximize and explore the outer life. And perhaps, in fact, a moment like this is really an invitation from nature, from the universe, for us to also seek to start taking a look within ourselves, taking a look at the core of humanity, taking a look as well to our relationship with nature. And I think it's when we start to do that, then there's an abundance of possibilities and paths, for how to do this inner game. And once we get there, well, then we can start integrating that inner and the outer.
I love that. So I want to show everybody this article because this is quite the article. It's from Psychology Today, and the headline is, "Can One Man Save American Business?" And it says, Hitendra Wadhwa teaches current and future executives how to breathe. He believes that self-regulation can achieve what market regulation cannot: great business leadership. This is a very striking image that you're about to see here. There's a life preserver being thrown, and the guy who's holding it is right there. And that's our Hitendra Wadhwa, who is holding that. He wants companies to value the whole person, not just the business person. And this was a cover story in Psychology Today. And I know it's been a while since this was written. Hitendra, how do you react when you're seeing that? And And that's a lot of pressure to say one man to save American business.
Yeah, I mean, see, it reminds me once of moments with Mother Teresa, where I mean, of course, like, who am I to compare myself with her, right? But as a place to get instruction, for myself, she was once asked about, how she feels about, all the good work she does and all that, and she says, well, what do you mean, how should I feel about myself? She says, look, I am just the pencil that God picked up to write a love letter to the world. Would you ever praise the pencil, for the good work the pencil did? Or would you, praise the writer of that letter, right? And so to that end, I just want to offer that I'm grateful, to the writer of this article. I'm grateful to the magazine and the editor, right? To all were deeply, thoughtful in identifying that there was, that I was at the, cutting edge, the front edge of a trend that I think has since started to, increasingly become more tangible, and which I believe with COVID-19 is going to further accelerate, which is a trend towards recognizing, as you said, Sree, the whole person in business, recognizing that we have an inner self and an outer self, recognizing that we are keen to want to be our true self in all moments, at work just as much as in life. And yet it's a struggle. It's a struggle to discover and uncover, our true self. And then it's a struggle in integrating that into, all the affairs of the world and our professional hungers and everything else. And so, so yes, I've been on that quest at Columbia and beyond, to seek to find a path towards self-discovery, self-mastery, and then the outer impact that can result from it. And I'm grateful to Psychology Today to have, kind of tuned in early to that trend.
Thank you. We have some serious questions that are coming in, but before that, we have a fun question from Arlene, who says, Professor, that painting behind you, what are its origins? Very interesting. So if you want to look back, if you know which painting that's behind you.
Yeah, no, I know it well. And, I appreciate it, Arlene, for you having taken that kind of glance, behind me as well. You're right. It is a Modigliani, but it's a fake Modigliani. It was actually painted by my wife. And it brings back fond memories of our days in Chicago. I used to work at McKinsey & Company that time. I just graduated from my doctoral program, and we were just young, both at heart and in life, and kind of seeking to discover our place on the planet. And she has been very fond of art, and during that time was taking some classes and then finding beautiful outer expressions of those those passions of hers through art like this.
And tell us a little bit about your family so that people understand the context of everything you're able to do.
Thank you. I was born and raised in Chandigarh, a beautiful town in the north of India. My father, as I mentioned, was in the National Indian Police Service. He had a very colorful life, having migrated to India at the time of India's independence in 1947, including a very painful chapter with the partition of India and the riots that ensued there, where he, among others, had faced some casualties in his family. And then married my mother when she was just, a young girl of 18. They had 4 children. So I have 3 siblings, all of whom are sisters. And then when I was about 21, I migrated to the United States. While I was doing my graduate studies there, I met up with Renu, who has been my wife and the love of my life ever since. She, it's interesting because some time ago, a cousin of hers, a dear member of the extended family, discovered a picture where she and I are at an event together. And that was apparently the first time we must have crossed paths with each other. And I think I was about 7 that time, and she was about 2. So there was apparently a moment in history when we could have gotten to fall in love and get married a little earlier than we actually did. And then we have a daughter. Her name is Marie Nalini, and I think I already mentioned to you that we had decided kind of want to raise her in India. She is such a bounty of just blessing and pleasure for us that we decided to stop right there after 1.
Well, but what a story about running into your future wife at the age of 7 and she at 2. That's it's like from a movie. And
yeah, in fact, if you are, if you and our dear friends in the audience are okay to humor me, I'm going to try to see if I can just find it. Would you be open to having me just share that
yeah,
picture?
sure. Yeah, if you want to either email it to me, or if you want to WhatsApp it to me, I will share it with the audience. So if you want to find it.
I will do so right now because I just found it.
Okay, and Marilyn says, this is fantastic. And she's, by the way, on Staten Island, as we said. Ashok Sharma says, true, this is time to redesign our lifestyle. Care for nature, family, relationship, food, more natural food, no junk food anymore. Isn't that just great? Joe says, what can our president do to provide more hope and confidence in getting back to normalcy? So that's, I think, our first leadership question. There'll be more. We can either answer that now, or we can come back to that, Hitendra. Your choice.
So, I'm happy to kind of take a stab at it. So could you repeat the question once?
So what can our president do in America to provide more hope and confidence in getting back to normalcy? And Joe, by the way, is right outside Atlanta, a city that I'm sure you know well.
Yeah. See, in some ways, I don't envy him, right? His position right now is a tough one, whichever way you look at it. Because how do you provide that hope, right? I mean, if we have to be truly honest, right, with ourselves, at this stage, with the nature of the virus and its pernicious impact, on society, on our lifestyles, on health, it seems like there's really no knowable, at the present moment, right? And so let's start with that sort of realization that given that at the present moment, it's not clear when there will be some scientific breakthroughs about vaccinations or cures, what exactly truly is the long-term impact of this virus, etc. There was a very nice op-ed, I think, in the New York Times yesterday, where the gentleman, the op-ed writer, was just writing down the 27 things that are unknown, about the impact of this virus, right? And it's sobering, right? So in that context, right, if you're the president, what do you do? Well, for me, the greatest guidance for that comes from studying moments in history where we have faced similarly calamitous and uncertain times. Sometimes at a societal level, sometimes at a global level, or sometimes at a local level. And one of the things I find, what great leaders do in moments like this, is that they engage in what has sometimes been called the Stockdale paradox. So Admiral Stockdale, was the highest ranking American ever to be a prisoner of war in Vietnam early in the course of that war. And one of the things he observed, having ultimately survived, and gotten to, be released, right? One of the things that he observed is that the optimists, the people who kept having hope that by Christmas, we are going to actually be liberated because America will win the war, right? Or, Christmas is come and gone, but by Easter, we'll be liberated. Those people actually did not survive. They lost hope after Christmas, or otherwise kept it up until, Easter, and then lost hope right after Easter, and died, because the war didn't seem to have any, semblance of coming to an end. And he said the people who survived were those that never lost hope in the long run, but who were very grounded in the immediacy of the challenge and the risk that was there in front of them. And he himself is a great exemplar of that, because he noticed that actually there was a lot of torture happening in those Vietnamese prisoners of war camps, right? And he realized that he and fellow prisoners were at risk of getting tortured as well, and that he, being so senior, might actually be pushed to be like put in front of the camera to actually make some confessions or say certain things which could be concessions to the Vietnamese, as a very visible officer of the American forces, etc. And so what he did as a proactive step, anticipating that kind of risk, is that he took the one piece of furniture there was in his prison cell, which was apparently like a wooden chair, and he used it to completely batter up and disfigure his face, right? So bloodied and disfigured, right? He just kind of made a bet with himself that his captors would not put him on television when he was looking like this, which made it look like they had beaten him up, right? And so as a proactive step, and what happened then is that these captors of his, they realized that this man was beyond pain, that he could inflict pain on his own self. And so they actually didn't torture him, because of that, right? And so I'm not claiming that that's what a president needs to do, but I am suggesting that this Stockdale paradox is probably a very instructive one, both at the presidential level, but I would also say at the leadership level in any organization that you're a part of, which has been also shaken and struck by uncertainty right now about its future, financial or otherwise. Or even, I would say, in our families, right? When, let's say, our kids are coming to us and say, hey, mom, dad, I really want to get back to school, or what's going to happen to a summer vacation, or when are we actually going to be able to go to the Bahamas, or like, will we have any money to save up for this or that or whatever, right? In situations like that, if you, really activate the Stockdale paradox, and that's something I would certainly promote for President Trump as well, you've got to be an agent that can offer long-term hope and optimism that in the long run, humanity has always been able to prevail over these crisis moments. There's some beauty, there's some resilience, there's some innovation, there's some capacity in humanity, some grit in humanity that we are able to collectively come together and surmount any of these like major shocks and adversities, right? But at the same time, exactly when the turnaround happens, and between now and then, what are the risks here? And what do we need to do to keep life really protected, safe, simple, right? Non-attached, so that we're not really obsessing with whether like, okay, in May, am I going to be able to get my life back, or in June or whatever? No. Let's kind of just like put aside from all of that, right? Recognizing that in the short run, there's a lot of uncertainty along the way. And at the same time, let's just keep that hope very active and alive in our bosoms.
Thank you, Hitendra. Here's a comment. Jim Stockdale's book was amazing, an excellent read. So people are really aware of some of the things you're talking about. Andrea has another suggestion for the president. He says, resign, she says. We have, Joe says, President Trump won the election partly due to his self-proclaimed business acumen. What skill set does he offer to reopen America? And you're, of course, aware of all the tension around that conversation that's taking place now. So do you have a thought on that you'd like to share?
Yeah, well, again, to give him the benefit of the doubt, he, as I recall, right, he was initially very resistant to the idea of taking the virus seriously. Mm-hmm. Then he ended up imposing some actions to, restrict travel from China. Then he ended up sort of actually at some point waking up to the realization that this is an important thing, to pay attention to. And closing the country. Then apparently we heard the news that he was going to get everything back to normal by Easter. And the experts were, going crazy, or like, wait a second, there's no way we can get back to normalcy by Easter. So he acceded to them and he made it, closer to the end of the year. Now it looks like early May is when he's hungering for opening the economy up. So look, one thing any good leader, business leader or political leader or social leader, what have you, one thing any good leader should do is recognize the limits of their own knowledge and recognize for the kind of problem you're looking at, who are the people who should be considered the experts? Who should you go to for advice and counsel, right? And if you think of it that way, then the idea that at least on 2 or 3 of these occasions recently, while he struggled to let go of his own personal, kind of assertions and prognostications, the fact that he's ultimately bowed to that sort of expert viewpoint, gives us a sign of hope, right? That he may continue to do that. He may continue to let the Dr. Fauci's of the world, right, help guide him towards the answer. Because my one counsel would be that in this case, we have to, of course, keep the economy in mind, but I think all of us, recognize the health, primacy, of the present moment in terms of what we really need to make sure that we can keep ourselves protected from, the virus and its pernicious kind of health impact.
Thank you. We're looking at your website, hitendra.com, and we're encouraging our friends who are watching to subscribe. So you can just go on to hitendra.com and hit subscribe, and you have a newsletter. Tell us a little bit about what people will get. And what do you mean by the intersection of life and leadership?
Let's talk about the life and leadership piece for a second first, Sree, and then I can come to the newsletter. So it's something that I have long been very kind of intrigued about and drawn to, which is what is the relationship between how we show up at work and who we are, not just in our personal life, but who we are truly to ourselves. Because you know what? This so-called dichotomy between work and life, as people say, I don't even think that is a very complete way of thinking about it, because tell me one thing, are you always, right, in a position to be very genuine, even to your own spouse, even to your own family, even to your own circle of friends? Or are there not sometimes, certain yearnings and certain thoughts and certain dreams, etc., which it's even hard to find, the capacity to be fully free and open to explore those, even with the people at home? And so to that end, when I say life and leadership, what I'm really meaning is your inner world and your outer world, and the opportunity we have to try to harmonize and bring these together, not merely by acting on every impulse, acting on every habit, acting on every desire, acting on every emotion, but by first discovering amongst all the false, drives within us and friends, within us and forces within us, what is the true impulse within? What is the true sort of, voice of conscience, voice of goodness, voice of purity, my best self, my highest potential within me that I most identify with, that I feel like that's my real self. That's the hero within, and that's who I truly am, right? And once we can uncover and discover that and develop some discipline through which we can connect with that, then, well, how do I project it on the outside? That's the leadership part. Now, to me, that leadership needs to be displayed, not just at work, not just when I need to inspire or motivate my people at work, or to like manage conflict at work, or to make, problem solving happen at work. But you got to do the same thing within your family and within your circle of friends. You got to, from time to time, inspire them. You got to, at times, kind of just have the space for a constructive, difficult conversation there, or coach them, or take feedback from them, or etc. So all the kind of games we have to play in the workplace from an interpersonal standpoint are the same games that we have to play in our family and in our friend circle as well. And so that's the life and leadership fusion. This newsletter is really an invitation to start absorbing some of these ideas, into your own life and into your own leadership from the lens of the latest scientific discoveries of the laws of human nature, which is kind of my passion, but also by seeing how those laws of human nature are exemplified by the lives that have been led by people we truly admire over the course of history. People like a Mother Teresa, like an Abraham Lincoln, like an Eleanor Roosevelt, like a Nelson Mandela, like a Martin Luther King, like a Warren Buffett, for some of us, a Steve Jobs. There was something, in these people that was connecting, right, deeply with the highest in human potential. And when we study that, and when we, seek to make that a practical pathway for our own selves, well, then we realize that actually we all have this shared possibility of rising to a really special place over the course of our life and our leadership.
That's a terrific way of looking at it. I want to point out that if I had almost any other B school professor, Warren Buffett and Steve Jobs wouldn't be the last in a list of names that they would be evoking as examples. And certainly this photo is not a typical Columbia B school professor photo. So talk about this photograph and what that says about you. We're also looking at your bio here on the screen. How does this fit into the very financial focus driven kind of MBA education? I want to tell you that Aparna Mukherjee has started a watch party on Facebook, and she says, check out Hitendra Wadhwa and my one-time quant marketing professor at CBS, Columbia Business School, and she has tagged the Columbia B School, Columbia Southern California alums, and the mighty Cluster C. I know that B School is all around clusters, right?
Hello, Aparna. So nice to know that you're connecting with us this way. Thank you, Sree, for bringing our two worlds together again. You bring back fond memories in me. Look, I have long had an interest in if you want to call it the hard questions, about life, like what is consciousness? Who am I? What happens, beyond one life? Is there a connection between each of us and the universe and with each other, and all of that? And so, the path that I found most rewarding as a way to, really explore this, outer boundaries, of our lived experiences was initially it was spiritual and philosophical, investigations and conversations with people who were deeply steeped in those disciplines, or in reading some of the books, of the leading lights in those disciplines. But then over time, I realized that I really wanted to go beyond the intellect in something more experiential. And that is where meditation became really, in a sense, my pillar. I'm very grateful to a spiritual path and a teacher and a teaching that I embraced, at a fairly early age. Yogananda, who is considered the founding father of yoga in the West, who came to the United States actually exactly 100 years ago in 1920 to set up, an international movement called Self-Realization Fellowship. And, for me, it was just an access point into ancient wisdom packaged in a very accessible modern language of English, and something that with its secular cross-faith kind of, temperament just truly appealed to me. And with its focus more on the inner practice rather than the outer rituals, again, really appealed to my, intuition that it's when you strip out, the accoutrements and go to the core essentials of who you are as, as a human being, not a human doing, that there is the potential for tremendous transformation. And once I have been able over time to start to get some of the early glimpses of that, light and that potential, that there is in any of us, because I'm still at the early stages of what, is an unbounded journey. I started to realize, oh my heavens, there has to be a way to somehow express this energy and connect with people on the basis of this energy, even in what I teach and what I do. And marketing, which is the first set of topics I had started to teach at Columbia, was my first platform. And I still remember this one day in my class. It was my last day of a semester-long class. And by that time, I'd fallen in love, with the students. I was really in a very, kind of state of deep connection with them. And it was kind of like breaking my heart, as it always did at the end of the semester. Knowing, and Sree, you've been, in my shoes as well, and you are in my shoes still. So you know what that's like, right? And you know that you're going to let these folks go and your heart is breaking into 35 pieces, and each of them is going to carry one piece with them. And so I felt this one time that what can I do to give them the greatest contribution that I can make? And is it actually going to be in the equations of marketing, or is it going to be in the equations of life? And so this one time, I just went out of my comfort zone. And I told my students that, look, we have 15 minutes left before we wrap up this last class of the semester. It is not clear to me that, your path and my path will ever cross again, although I hope and I look forward to that moment with many of you. And so what I thought I'll do is give you my crown jewels in these 15 minutes, which is really what are the 3 greatest lessons I've learned in life, which I didn't know at the time I was your age. And so I shared 3 stories. And then after that, one of the students, came up to me and he said, Professor, I want to thank you for a great class. I learned a lot from it, and I'm really grateful. And he said, but I want to especially thank you for the last 15 minutes, because those 15 minutes were more valuable than the rest of the semester. And I tell you, he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to say that. Nobody else came and said that, that day to me. But it left a strong mark on me. It really encouraged me to further nurture, this voice within and find platforms through which to experiment with and express it. And so I started to do non-credit, seminars, and then gradually proposed to the school that I might be able to teach a class, and then fumbled my way into it. And, over time it became a very popular leadership elective at Columbia. And now I can look back and smile and feel really good and confident about the path I've taken. But it's as Steve Jobs says, you can only connect the dots looking backward. You can't connect them looking forward. And in that moment, when he said that to me, I had no idea what a life-transforming moment it was for me in the classroom, not as a student, but as a professor hearing from one of his students.
That's incredible. Stefan says, it's always about purpose and passion in my world. Signing up for your newsletter, Professor. So we're doing this one person at a time as we're getting. Here's Mark Lee in Durham, North Carolina, has just signed up for your newsletter. Folks, sign up. Give us feedback. Talk about this, and start a watch party. So easy to do if you're watching on Facebook. Just share it with your friends. Tag it. This is such great information you're getting, wisdom you're getting, and you can watch this at any point that you like. I love this comment from Tanya, who's watching, who is a photographer herself. She is Malala's photographer, the Nobel Prize winning peace warrior. And she says, I love this photo so much. And not a typical, it'd be fair to say, Hitendra, not a typical Columbia V School professor's photo. And that's why it's so great. Arlene is really investigating your desk because she says there is a Nelson Mandela book behind you. Which lessons of his have you adapted into your leader theories? And that's a great segue. We didn't even have her. She doesn't even know about this, but we're going to show them a book, an article you wrote exactly about this. So how about that? Our viewers are really attuned to the important things. Nelson Mandela and the Evolution of Great Leaders, a piece you wrote in Fortune magazine. So talk a little bit about Nelson Mandela and what he means to the world. I know you have other leaders we're going to show, but let's start here with Nelson.
Well, what is well known about Mandela is that he was a very, aspirational and zealous fighter against apartheid, got himself arrested and convicted and thrown into prison, for his, kind of just breeding all kinds of unrest, as an allegation from the South African government. He spent 27 years there, then he came out. And he came out, on a wave of a victorious ascension, right, to a democratic president, the first, in South Africa's history in the last 100 years, right? And so that part of him, when he came out from prison, became president, and the part of him when he was fighting, against apartheid before he went into prison, those are the two chapters we know really well. For me, what was the most transformational and inspiring was to learn about his 27 years in prison and what he did when he was in prison. And here are the three things that I discovered about his time in prison which really inspired me. And by the way, I don't know if have any of you gone there, and it'd be nice if in the chat window you can share if you've actually been to Robben Island. I had the privilege of going there, a couple of years ago from Cape Town. You take a boat and you get there, and there are actually fellow prisoners of his era, his time, who are still there, who actually will take you around and give you first-hand accounts and then allow you to get to see and experience what it must have been like for Mandela and his fellow prisoners. Now, one of the things that I discovered there is that, he was really into physical fitness. And well, now he's in prison. So what does he do? He spends 1 hour jogging every day in his prison cell. Then he spends another hour doing like push-ups and this ups and that ups. I don't even know because I'm not like, as much of a gym expert, right? But he does like 2 hours of exercise, and then he goes and he starts to water some plants, and then he and that's the first like oh wow kind of moment, and the second oh wow moment was how he worked on watering his own plants. In other words, how he really took that opportunity and the time and the quietude and the forced simplicity of his life to really reflect on his character, do a lot of introspection, maintain a certain kind of like a score sheet every day, reflect on how did I act today, in alignment or against these values of mine, and berated himself when he felt he didn't sort of meet the bar that he wanted to. And he actually wrote to his wife at some point and say, you know what, like in prison, you don't have to really pursue popularity and success and education, all that stuff on the outside. So you have all this time to work on your character. So that was amazing, watering his own plant and really developing himself into the best version of himself. And then the third insight that for me was very powerful about his time in prison is that one of the ways in which he actually improved and grew in prison was that he just became more masterful of his anger. He was able to really walk away from feelings of vindictiveness and revenge. And the Mandela, therefore, that walked out from prison was a much more understanding, bridge-building, calm, enduring face of the African National Congress that disarmed, the party in power, right? The apartheid regime, and he was able to actually open them up to actually surrendering, in a sense, the keys to the throne, right? Knowing that by opening themselves up to democracy, they would be out of power, and then the newly elected government could, in theory, do anything they liked with with them. So they were really seeking to protect their own interests and their families after all the atrocities they'd committed. But with Mandela, they could just feel the sense of peace and comfort that he was not going to go down the path of vindictive retribution, etc., as, for example, Mugabe had done in Zimbabwe. And that capacity for Mandela to actually exude that aura of somebody who would deal from a place of greater reconciliation and grace was not the Mandela who had walked into prison 27 years ago. This was the head of the guerrilla arm of the African National Congress, 27 years ago. But he had mellowed down, he had opened his heart up, he'd understood the need for compassion, reconciliation, and forgiveness, etc. And so that revelation, again, for me was very profound. And this article that Sree, you've been kind enough to kind of like showcase here from Fortune, which I had the privilege of writing soon after his passing as my form of sort of like, paying homage to this amazing man and this amazing life, is an article where I am essentially reflecting on a number of slip-ups and flaws, that he had, over the course of his life. And then I say that, what great leaders are about is that they take on great causes. And when they take on great causes, they make great mistakes along the way. They cannot be perfect 100% of the time in the decision making. But the thing that differentiates a great leader from an average leader is that when they make those mistakes, they are open to self-reflection. They're open to actually evolving and changing their future direction. And they're open to acknowledging and apologizing for the errors. And there are examples of those that I give in this article.
Wonderful. There's so many comments coming in. Tanya says she has been in Mandela's cell and she has a tiny rock from Robben Island on her dresser. I'm sure it's inspiring
amazing
to have that. And she also says, by the way, that I always loved to study at Columbia B School Library. I was in Avery for architecture, never knew there could be a business school teacher like you. It would have changed my impression of the entire school to know this. And I'm sure you're opening a lot of minds right now. And that's really great. Lots of comments coming in. Too many CEOs are robotic in their actions, unable to vision a pathway to good governance or even just adopting the triple bottom line. What are you doing to adjust the Columbia MBA to address this national failure?
Yeah, I've been, by the way, Tanya, thank you for those comments as well. And I'm so, happy to hear about your Columbia connection, as well. See, here's the thought I want to, kind of like test out with our friends in the audience, right? The immediate urge when we see a gap in society, when there is something going on that is not, commensurate with our aspirations for the world, we just want to go and fix it. We want to be a good Samaritan. We want to be able to sort of like just go and help that part of the world, donate to that cause, go and fight for that cause, legislate for that cause, etc. Right? And there is, I think, a lot of merit and power, to that sort of, outer expression and projection of that energy from our side to purify and beautify the world. But I've been deeply also influenced by Gandhi's philosophy, right? And what he said once, where he said that as a human being, our greatness lies not as much in remaking the world as in remaking ourselves. And, if you really study his life from the inside out, you will find so many times and examples where that's what he did. He invested in himself. He really worked on perfecting, right? Every thought, every action, every word, that he was engaged with. And through doing that, what ended up happening is that he developed a lot of inner charisma as opposed to outer charisma. You just think about it, right? From the outside, this man had anything but charisma. He was a, seemingly, feeble looking, half his teeth missing, man in a, kind of small little kind of piece of white cloth around him. I mean, compare that to us like dressing for success and, making our hair and, doing all of this stuff every day for having outer charisma, right? But what he had was this tremendous, like, invisible force that seemed to just like giving a very arresting presence, right? Great gravitas. And when you were in his presence, he just drew the peace aspect of you from your soul, right? He just drew that out, right? And that is, to me, the definition of inner charisma. Not somebody who projects just that aura, but who draws that out from you, right? And to that end, there's just something here for, for all of us to explore. And that is really my approach, to the question that was just raised at the business school, which is rather than seek to approach this from the lens of policy, right? From the lens of sort of like, thou shalt this and shalt not this, I'm hoping to create an invitation for those who are truth seekers and who are open for self-reflection and growth to come in and drink from this fountain of like remaking yourself, right? And what is that science of remaking yourself? And once enough of us go down that path, well, then maybe some amazing collective, energy is going to come to the world in terms of advancement of human consciousness, because each of us has changed ourselves, from within, and inspired others in our families, in our communities, in our organizations to do the same for themselves. Just like one Gandhi was able to inspire 300 million Indians and legions of people around the world since, including our own Martin Luther King in the US.
Thank you. Folks, you're watching a conversation with Professor Hitendra Wadhwa. I think we could be here for 2 hours if we're not careful. I want to be aware of his time. It's early morning in India. He's on Twitter, Hitendra W. Please follow him and sign up at hitendra.com for his newsletter. Several people have done that already, and we're getting such great comments, Hitendra. I hope we'll have time to go through all of them. Here's a greeting from Chennai. Have you been?
Hello. Yes, of course. Fond memories, including of this beautiful drive from Chennai to Puducherry. Right.
Oh, very nice. This is Vandana Menon, who's one of the producers of our show, who is tweeting about the intersection of life and leadership. We want to first discover within ourselves what is the true impulse within us, says Hitendra. What is my best self? Once we uncover that, then we can project it outside of ourselves, apply it to our jobs, our family. And she's talking about us live tweeting, and follow Rose Horowitz 31, who is live tweeting this show. Mark says Malcolm X and leaders of the Black Panthers did a lot of that self-reflection when they were in prison as well. And I also think the leaders of the American Indian movement also had that same experience. Anita says, Kalpana Mohan, unfortunately, that is true. This is the use of artists displaying all the awards and titles on their walls and mantelpieces as if they are broke, and their ROI and bottom line is non-existent. So a lot of conversation going on. Even as we are speaking, people are having good conversations on the side. And look at Kalpana tagging Bernadette D'Souza. She says, you will enjoy this conversation. Folks, do that, because as soon as this conversation's over, it's available on Twitter, on Facebook. Please follow my YouTube, and follow my YouTube is Sreenet, where you can find this conversation, and also follow Hitendra's YouTube. Subscribe, please. He's got lots of great content there. In fact, let's take a glance at his YouTube right now. It'll give you a sense of all the things that he has there. He's just building it up right now. And there's Mandela, and there's MLK, and there's Gandhi, and there's Abraham Lincoln. So you've been posting a lot of conversations and tips and views. And look at some of these views. You have 3,000, 2,000 people have seen these videos, and these have just been posted a week ago, 2 weeks ago. So that tells you the value of this. And he's Hitendra W on YouTube as well as on Twitter. I'm Sreenet. Please connect with me as well. To be true to yourself, it says, I should be able to freely express myself, thoughts, feelings, values, personality, and desires. It'd be fair to say, Hitendra, that not everybody can do that. And that's one of the things they learn from taking your classes and your workshops. And we should tell people that you're offering a whole variety of ways to learn. So one is through your YouTube channel. Other is through your LinkedIn. Another is by reading all these articles that you're writing. But you also have an entire institute and webinars that you're offering right now. So let's take a look at one of them. So tell us about Mentora.com. What is that? Sorry, Mentora.institute, the Mentora Institute for Life and Leadership, and your 60-minute webcast. Every week you're doing one, and that's professionally run by your team. This is poor man's version of that, so I apologize for all the ways we're producing, but tell us what people will get when they go to Mentora.institute and sign up for this weekly webcast.
Sree, I am when it comes to between us, I am the student and you are the professor. So I'm learning so much from you. Mentora, has been my vehicle through it. You see, here's what happened. So about 12 years ago, I started to teach this class on personal leadership and success at the business school. Then I was drawn to how to propagate, these ideas and thoughts, to the world beyond. I tried to kind of teach it at Columbia College, kind of like struggled, with having the college open up to this class from me at that time, because I think they were not familiar with the business school, and with me, we don't really have much of a program between the business school and the college. My act of revenge has been that this year my daughter is now, admitted to Columbia College, so she's gonna go there and make this secret foray for us. But anyway, since I couldn't make it happen in the college, For a while, I was very disappointed. And then I just asked myself, wait a second, why am I only limiting myself to the confines of Colombia? I love Colombia, but there's the world beyond Colombia too. And that too is my family, beyond my Colombia family. And so the Institute became that vehicle. We have both a foundation through which we do pro bono work and reduced fee work with schools, for example, in Harlem, and nonprofits in other parts of the world, as well as a for-profit arm through which we work typically with institutions, with corporations, with businesses, to help advance leadership, to help advance culture in these organizations from this lens of inner mastery that leads to outer impact. Because I'm convinced that you can actually, as long as your purpose is noble, as long as you can kind of look at yourself, very honestly in the eye and say that the products that we are building, the services that we are offering the world, yes, we're there to make profits. Let's say if you are on the business side, but at the same time, we're not doing it with just purely a naked eye towards just like maximizing, financial outcomes. We're doing it out of a great sense of advancing, society and humanity, and serving legitimate needs out there in some beautiful and innovative ways, right? And so, as long as that's the case, then the thesis I want to offer to you is that the more of this work you do towards really identifying your core, your true self, and and expressing that through energies like purpose and wisdom and love and self-realization and growth, well, then you can also do your best outer work in terms of the way you inspire and direct and mobilize and connect and seek out collaboration and build resilience in your organization, right? And so outer leadership should really be an expression of the inner activation of that core, that true self, and that energy. That's our thesis. We have a very systematic path towards helping train leaders and train organizations on a step-by-step journey towards the discovery and cultivation of these energies from within, and then the actual actions that you take on the outside to actually create inspirational leadership from them, and therefore transform your culture. And so that's what we do in Mentora. Now, within that, when COVID happened, my team and I just felt like we had to find our way to serve, and we were not qualified to be in a position to go out there and serve in the way that these heroes in the medical establishment, for example, are doing, or in the or in the other forms of frontline service that are happening around the world. Our way of doing that was to help support people with regard to well-being, with regard to resilience, with regard to finding meaning in moments like that, with regard to learning how to make hard decisions. Because let's face it, isn't each of us right now from time to time being confronted with needing to make all kinds of hard decisions, right? And then how do you rebound from adversity at moments like this? How do you maximize the potential of your people? This could be people in your family as well as people in your teams at work, in moments like this, right? And so there were all these questions that we were seeing come from our community. And we just felt like we just had to do some public work as well at this time, beyond the institutional work. And so we've launched this webcast, which is really our attempt to put into that flow of, human understanding, all that we've studied and understood about mastering leadership at times of disaster and challenge, and flourishing despite the crash or breaking waves around you.
Look at all these companies you've worked with, some of the biggest companies in the world. So inspiring to see how you've built. You're at the core, you are obviously a business school professor, and so understanding and teaching businesses how to do this, I think, is so important. And these are some of the people you've dealt with, and some of the insights that you're sharing. I love this. And people can go to mentora.institute is the address so that they can find it. And there's a weekly webcast, and they'll learn so much. There are many, many comments coming into Hitendra. Please bear with us. Arlene says, I'm going to look up that Mandela article and the Stockdale book. Now, about that ceramic elephant behind you, just kidding. Martha says, remaking yourself, inspiring yourself and your community. If not now, then when? And we have comments saying, yes, I think this pandemic is encouraging that shift of human consciousness. Mark says, one thing I've known about great leaders is that they don't only pay attention to people, but to the earth and Mother Nature.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful.
And Rajita Bansal has shared this on her Facebook page. And that's the power of this, folks. please tag a friend, please start a watch party, get this out there, because this is so rare to have this kind of conversation, and we're having it globally at this moment. I get your approach and philosophy behind it, says Daryl. It's not enough. The MBA programs across the country created the failure in leadership. So you need to also address that being on the inside. You can do both simultaneously. Grab this challenge and be a great professor. So Daryl,
thank you, Daryl.
So,
I'm inspired. Thank you.
And Sindhu is wishing me and all the Kerala people watching happy Vishu. This is a time of a lot of festivals in India, right? Vaishakhi and others as well. And I would add Desmond Tutu to that wall of inspiration. His book on forgiveness is beautiful. Renee says, I believe the professor aims to lead by example. Do you agree? And I think you absolutely do. And Stefan says, I could listen to Professor Wadhwa all day. He truly speaks with heart and soul. I can't wait to receive his newsletter. So I hope you're working on that newsletter because you've got people who wants it. And Professor Wadhwa projects inner strength, which is pretty cool. A partner says, I'm literally just saying how good the production quality is on this, Sree. Ask Julian. Props to the team, which is great. Are you familiar with the McCain School of Leadership? I'd love to see you working with them, connecting the hearts to the minds of leaders around the world. So I presume that's a school in Arizona, probably at ASU or the University of Arizona. And always be true to yourself. Everything shines through. And Samir is tagging someone in his family. I love that. And that's what we're doing here. But I do want to get you to get me back to your work that you're doing. You're in India now. How do you see us as a country, as countries? What India's approach, right? By some miracle, India is doing much better than the United States in terms of managing this crisis as of now, right? There isn't enough testing, so we don't know for sure. But the orders of magnitude in difference in terms of the impact and the number of deaths. Your other city, New York, as you know, has more cases than any country in the world except the United States. How did we end up in this position? And have we lost that leadership and that shining hill that a lot of people perpetuate about America, the city on the shining city on a hill, how great it is, how wonderful it is. The president keeps saying we're the greatest, we're the greatest. But are we? Haven't we exposed the ungreatness of America, the hospital system, no matter how great the heroism of all the workers, the fact that we're in this situation, that food banks are giving out food, and you saw those photographs of thousands of people waiting for food in their cars. Like, talk a little bit about this. Reflect on this for us, please.
Yeah, Sree, I mean, I'd be drawn to your thoughts on it as well, and that of our friends in the audience. It's a very, I think it's a humbling moment for humanity, for people, in positions of power and privilege, for the economies that have been considered to be the developed economies, right? And America is only one of a few of them that have been failed, right? Then, kind of people on their knees, whether it's in Europe or in America, right? With regard to the ferocity with which coronavirus has really, caused such, health wreckage there, right? And I'm with you that, let's look at it in comparison to the lives of people. I've studied the lives of all kinds of people, in this great achiever, great leader kind of mold. And one thing you find with these people is that they didn't sort of like just, go in some kind of like a linear path of growth, right? An ascension towards their, highest attainment. They actually went on a path which would go like this, right? So there were these several hiccups and moments of setbacks, that they went through. The difference between them and others was that they were able to lift themselves up in those moments, grow new strength, grow new muscle, pivot, evolve, and then ultimately get to a really, really good place. Now, if we can do the same thing as a culture, as America, for example, and learn from this moment, learn from structurally and leadership-wise and culture-wise in every household. That's what I mean by culture. What is it that we did not do right in the first couple of months of coronavirus, and perhaps in the months and years in preparing for a potential pandemic like this in the past? What is it we didn't do right? If we can learn from it, then I think we can come back to actually a place of, having a legitimate right to consider ourselves a highly developed and safe and, prosperous economy, etc. At the present moment, we've actually exposed, to your point, a lot of fault lines. A fault lines perhaps in leadership, a fault line in institutions, and a fault lines in our culture, right? Where at the core, I continue to believe and have tremendous regard and respect and affection for, the American exceptionalism idea, the purity of the ideals that are represented in our Declaration of Independence, and ultimately in the more refined version of the Constitution that ultimately has taken root after a number of amendments which were legitimately needed in order to equalize the playing field for a lot of segments of the of society, right? But you take those aspirations that are codified there, you take that best self of what it truly means to be American that are codified there, and that is powerful, and that's truly inspiring, and it's something that I'm deeply grounded and grateful for. But at the same time, in the present moment, yes, there are things we can borrow from the approach that India has taken in this case. I have been so impressed with the manner in which there has been such attention to detail. But everyone who was kind of walking into the country, the tracking of those people, regardless of whether you showed any fever or not. I just walked into the country and immediately, they came to my home, put a quarantine notice because this person has come from abroad, 14 days, he's just asked to be at home. The police were coming in to check on me. My cell phone, they called me 5 times over the course of the 14 days, check on my health, including a 7-part automated set of questions to just keep on continually monitoring, my physical metrics, among other things, that they've done to really be in a very executionally, disciplined way, tracking and, kind of just containing, the scope of infections in the country. And I think that's something America should be humble enough and open enough to recognize that we can grow.
This article you wrote for CNN just very recently was about the namaste as a greeting, and interestingly, just a few minutes ago, one of the people watching asked about are there alternate greetings that could be a way for people to meet in the world. What do you think is going to happen the first time people are able to get across and connect, right? Are people going to be able to get on a plane? Are people be able to go to a conference? What's that going to be like? Can you imagine that for us?
That's a fascinating question. I haven't really thought of it that way, but I do think that any kind of in India, we have this triumvirate, right, of what they call Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. It's 3 faces of the creative force out there. Brahma is the creative part of it, Vishnu is the preservation part of it, and Shiva is the destruction part of it, right? And so we typically tend to, in our human experience, view destruction as negative, right? But it doesn't have to be that way. Destruction is nothing but creating the grounds for new creation to come up. Because if there was no destruction, then we'd be stuck with a particular version, 2.0 of humanity, forever, right? It's because we've been able to destroy civilizations and rebuild on that today we are version 19.0 of civilization, right? And we've got to get to a version 20.0, right? So if you look at it from that vantage point, then what I would say is, to your question, Sree, that the first part of this next phase of re-engagement, right, with society and with ourselves is going to be one which what are the rules of the game here? I don't know. What am I supposed to do and not to do? And, I probably should maintain some social distancing. Should I hug? Should I shake hand? And so my sense is that we are going to start to rebuild in sort of a organic way, right? Co-created way, certain fresh norms of how we engage. And then when the world is ultimately safer, when coronavirus has been tamed, which I have no doubt at some point it will be, through the advancements of modern science, vaccination, a cure, what have you, right? Some of these practices that we built during this more insecure phase are probably going to be practices that we feel there's no point, kind of letting go of these, because I like this practice. It's actually a good practice. It brings out the best in me, and it seems to bring out the best in you, right? Now, what those are going to be, I don't want to speculate, right? Let time just kind of take its own organic path there. But I do think that we're going to be in a state of tremendous, unconscious, organic ferment, right? In the way new social norms and practices are germinating in the months and years ahead.
Wow, that's so much great wisdom that you've just shared with us. It's 10:24 here in New York. That means it's still very early in India. I want to do a couple of things. There's so many comments. I just want you to hear some and maybe reflect on some. And then we want to show that photograph that I have of you and your wife when you were very young. And we have also several requests for the 3 stories. Those 3 stories you gave in the 15 minutes that changed your life. So we're not going to be able to do that. We want people to sign up for your courses, sign up for your newsletter, and get those stories that way, right? By the way, those students, they paid a lot of money for those 15 stories, those 15 minutes of wisdom. So we're not going to give away everything here, but I hope each and every person watching today will be inspired, has been inspired already. Please share this conversation. Please follow him on Twitter. Please sign up for his newsletter at hitendra.com and also sign up for his YouTube channel, which is Hitendra W. Hitendra W is his YouTube channel. So please do that. Courtney Pulitzer, who was our guest yesterday in our positivity. Every Sunday, we have positivity night. We should have had you for positivity night. She says, meditation and yoga have been so helpful for me in grounding my true self in the world. I truly recommend it. Several people have said they've already signed up. And there are the stories for those, the requests for those questions. And Rajita says,
let me say this to you. You think about what 3 stories you would have shared with my students if that was your moment. And I tell you, that's as close as I can get to offering you my stories, because your stories are going to mean the most, to you, just as mine did to me,
That's
so,
great.
Yeah.
And by the way, we should tell folks that you and I went to the same college, St. Stephen's in Delhi University, but a couple of years apart. You look younger than me, but and you have better hair for sure. But Rajita also went to Delhi University and is a friend from there. And she says, signing up for the newsletter, his thought process is very relatable and even more relevant in our current situation. So how nice is that? She lives in.
Thank you, Rajita. Good to meet you.
Yeah, and people are asking about how to watch this, and Stefan is saying they'll be able to watch this all on Facebook as I'm streaming directly on to my Facebook page. So people are out there sharing this. Already followed you on Twitter and YouTube. And Nitin, who's watching from Dharamshala, do you think at times fear of failing gets the best out of us?
Well, it's an interesting point. I like to think in terms of paradox, which means that, the same quality can have both a positive and a negative to it. And so when you think about something like fear of failure, for some people, it restricts them, right? It restricts them from moving forward, from trying things out, from, getting out of their comfort zone, from going up and talking to that person, from walking away from a certain path to try a new path, et cetera, right? And so fear of failure can be in some ways very restrictive on the one hand, but then also to the point you're making, in some cases, it can be the opposite, which is that when you do fear that failure, you pay more attention, you are more cautious, you are more thorough, you are more planful. You're able to do things in small bites and steps rather than just like bet the farm and take a big plunge. And those are beautiful things which allow you to evolve your way and sense your way step by step, right, towards an ultimately successful outcome, of which when you started, you didn't even know, where you were going to end up, right? But you were able to evolve your way into it. And so I'm with you that fear of failure, when approached in a healthy way, can be a very adaptive and resilient framework, and yet for some people can also be very restrictive.
Ratnesh Mathur says, Hitendra, how amazing. Unchanged. Yeah. Thinker and true friend from his Chandigarh school days at St. John's. Great insights, a bridge between East and West. When was the last time you saw Ratnesh?
Yeah, I know. The name just suddenly just rang so true to my heart, Ratnesh. What a joy. I can't believe it. What a small world to bump into you like this through the grace of Sree. Thank you so much. And what a sweet thought for you to share and write. And I hope you're well, my friend. Sending you a big virtual hug.
And Rajita says, good to see you on Facebook, Ratnesh. So again, people are connecting and sharing. Tanya says, not driving an hour a day is a good practice. Clear air over cities is beautiful. Today I saw the water in Haridwar is potable. This is beautiful outcome as well. And we know how much some of those water, in some of the holy waters in India are some of the least safe water that you can find. Let's see. My
I
mother.
have to say, whenever I used to come to Delhi, I used to always end up developing a bad throat, a cough, just from all the pollution there. And it's, I haven't had that, for the last few weeks. It's been pristine.
Yeah. And my mom, watching in Trivandrum in Kerala, says, Happy Vishu to you. Monu. Monu means son. Rupa, my wife, Durga, and Krishna, lots of love. Have you been to Kerala?
Yeah. Cochin and a couple of other beautiful places down there. It's a beautiful state. And you probably know this as well, Sree, that Kerala was in the news the other day. I think there was an article in the Washington Post which was really applauding Kerala for a job super well done. I mean, whatever India is doing at a national scale, Kerala was doing 10 times that out there. Right? It has always been known to be a model state in terms of economic and social and educational sort of progress in India. But apparently, even in the age of coronavirus, they've done some very distinctive things.
No, they really have. Joyce from SIPA says hello, and Stefan says, thank you for your insight. Do come meet a phenomenal photographer named Ranita Roy from Kolkata, whose work I think you'll absolutely live this Thursday on his new show, Spin It Social Hour. I will be sharing info about your newsletter to his audience. So that's great. That's what we love to see. But we have to bring this to a close, otherwise we'll just keep going. We also want to stop so that as soon as we're done, the replay starts so that friends and family around the world can watch. Please tag some folks. Please hit share so that they can participate in this. So Hitendra, before we let you go, a couple of thoughts. One, having seen the kinds of questions you've gotten, what is some wisdom you want to leave your new friends with? Two, who are the people that you admire the most who are doing relevant work at this time that you would give a shout out to? It could be anybody doing big or little work. It doesn't matter. All work is important. That's one of the things I have learned. We did a show with a very senior author and professor who, when asked to say who he's thankful for, he said he's thankful for the gentleman who delivers his newspaper, still gets up at 3:30 in the Bronx and delivers his New York Times every day. He was grateful for him. So let me hear, who are you grateful for right now, given everything that's going on, and what is some wisdom you want to leave us with?
Yeah, thank you, Sree. And I think those are beautiful questions. There's a story that I learned from one of my students. Warren Buffett is one of our illustrious alums from the business school. I wish I could stake a claim to having taught him, but he graduated safely a long time before I actually joined the business school. But he, apparently the student was sharing that he once said that I like to practice the 10% rule. And the 10% rule is that, when I'm interacting with anybody, I know that 10% of that person is truly inspiring. And it is like my puzzle, which is to figure out what is that 10% and how can I draw that out and how can I discover and celebrate and connect with that really inspiring part of this person. And it's been a revelation for me over the years as I started to teach this class on personal leadership to explore our fullest potential, thinking that I have to go in there as a professor, as the expert, as a research guy, and with all the science and the stories and everything. It's been a revelation for me to discover over the course of these years that the real spark in the class actually happens when I can activate that 10% within one or more of the students, or they can with each other. And it's at that point where the class gets to be in a state of flow. And I tell you, the most inspired person at the end of that journey is me. The amount of resilience and creativity and thought and heroism and possibilities that I witness, right, firsthand from these people. And when I understand some of their backgrounds and their parents' backgrounds, etc., and where they came from and what happened to them, etc., and sometimes a boss or a friend or something, you just get into this oh wow state. And at that point, you realize, this is not a world where there are some elite crew of like 17 really special people and the rest of us are like, commoners. This is a world where there are 7 billion really special people, and it's for each of us to discover and uncover that part. First, I would say within our own selves, and then within life around us. Because And this is to your point about what final words of guidance can I offer, right? In my own little imperfect way. Let me just offer this quote, right, that many of you have heard from Shakespeare, right, where he says, "To thine own self be true." But that's not the only thing he said, right? He said, "To thine own self be true," and then it follows, just as night follows day, that thou canst not be false to any other man. And just think about this idea, right? Here we're seeking to make friends. We're seeking to commit and tell the world that, I'm here for you, man. I'm caring. I'm loving. I'm a good leader. Come, be led by me. Be followed by me. And what Shakespeare is saying is, no, hold on. Think about that Gandhian idea about remaking yourself before remaking the world. Go within, get in touch with your true self, activate that purest and most beautiful diamond in the rough, that you are. Activate that. Because what will happen is, when you do that, when you're in touch with your joy, when you're in touch with your purest intentions, you start to realize that, my heavens, there is a treasure within everyone. If I have it in my own broken and imperfect way, then everyone has it, right? And then you start seeing the world through that lens of that Buffett-like sense of discovery about that 10% that lies within every one of us. And that's why when thou shalt be true to thyself, then it follows like night follows day, that thou canst not be false to any other man. Sree, I want to thank you for, one of the most memorable, early morning nights I've had here in India before I get into bed. I'm deeply grateful to,
people are going to be confused, so we should be clear. You spend all night writing, and that's why you're going to bed now, and you're keeping kind of American hours, some kind of connection with New York that you still have. Arlene says, since I'll be attending Columbia J School in the fall, I'm planning to sneak into your class. And then Tanya says, I'm going to come visit you and sneak in as well. And John shared that article in the Wall Street Journal. So after I say goodbye to you, I'm going to share that article to the audience and show them what you were talking about. Rose is a SIPA graduate, says insightful show. And Ratnesh, your old friend, says wonderful to connect again. We're 2 degrees, not 6 away. I note meet soon back in India, in Delhi too. And Tanya says, I think much more than 10% of a person is interesting. This has been riveting. Thank you. And Vandana said, generally never expected to hear a business professor quoting Shakespeare. So that's been, I think, a great note on which I can say goodbye to my friend Hitendra. I'm just pulling out my dad's book, which I have here. It's called Words. He's written 8 books in 14 years, my dad, after retiring. And Words, Words, Words is taken from Shakespeare. And it says Adventures in Diplomacy is his autobiography. And he talks about so many fabulous things in here. But I also wanted to make...
That's beautiful.
Yeah, so that's a Shakespeare connection. Just to complete that story, my dad grew up in a house with mud walls and no indoor plumbing, no electricity, same technology as Shakespeare 400 years earlier, and grew up to be a Shakespeare scholar.
Wow.
And then went into the Foreign Service, inspired my love of Shakespeare, which you don't even know about. At 9, he took me to Stratford-upon-Avon when we were coming to America for the first time. And to see him go to Stratford for the first time was unbelievable. And then I had this lifelong love for Shakespeare that then I got to go to Shakespeare Birthplace Trust and teach and work with them was, an unbelievable experience for me and so humbling. And the fact that we're here sitting quoting Shakespeare after all of these years. And as you know, he did some of his work during quarantine himself because there was the plague and all the terrible things that were happening. So creativity can come from anywhere and can not be just creative for now, can be creative for eternity, as we saw in those times. And several people have commented how many great things are going to be by side effect happening out of this. Advances in medicine, advances in technology, advances, I hope, in empathy will also be here for us. So with that, we're going to say goodbye to our friend Hitendra Wadhwa. Every single person here, you need to follow him on Twitter, Hitendra W. Sign up for his newsletter, hitendra.com. And also, please make sure that you are also connecting and sharing by going onto his YouTube channel, Hitendra W. And also check out Mentora.institute and his weekly webcast. So with that, bye, Hitendra. We're going to see you soon. and good luck. Stay safe. Oh, what about that photo? Look at this. Arlene producing, always being a producer. So we got to show this. Everybody ready? Hitendra, who has his wife he met and married, and they have a wonderful daughter, told us at the beginning of this that he was later discovered that there's a photograph of the two of them when he was 7 and she was 2, and we're going to show that photograph, and Hitendra can narrate a little bit.
Yeah, and that's approximate. I don't really know the precise age, but yeah, that's the picture. The gentleman right in the middle with the mustaches, that's my father. He's got his arm around me. I'm that boy on his left in the right of the picture. And the gentleman next to him is my wife's grandfather, Balram Jakar, who was, a speaker of the Indian Lok Sabha for a while.
Wow.
And the person next to him is my wife's cousin, who I'd known, growing up, as a kid. I'd never known about her family directly or her. And then she is right on top of my father. If you see the lady standing, that beautiful lady just behind my father, that's her mother. That's my mother-in-law. And then the girl in her arms, that tiny girl, that's my wife.
Oh my God! I just to hear that story is amazing, and the fact that you found the photo, somebody remembered, found the photo, and there it is. And where did you meet?
Yeah, we met in Boston. She was going to do an MBA in Worcester in Massachusetts, and I was in Boston, and so we met up there.
What a story! That's the great.
Yeah. But that was an incredible story about your dad, Sree. I really loved it. I was so thrilled to hear. And then your own forays into the land of Shakespeare. So thank you.
Thank you. And in fact, I even have a hashtag that I used to track all my Shakespearean adventures, Shreekspeare, where people comment on that.
Amazing.
And that's a lot of fun. And we should also tell folks that we went to the same college. You were a legend because you had done really well and gone off to America from St. Stephen's College at Delhi University. And then we never met there, but we met in New York, and here we are together. So goodbye. Go get some sleep.
And when you were chief digital officer at Columbia, we had some interesting conversations when I was trying to push the envelope, for the university and moving into the digital space. And you were such a steward, of helping the university really understand how to play the game well. So
absolutely. Well, thank you so much. We're going to let Hitendra go. I'm going to show you this article and do a couple of housekeeping notes. We have some great events coming up as well, so we want to do that. Bye, Hitendra.
Take care. Godspeed. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And there he is. Wasn't that amazing? Please do follow him and do connect with him. This is the article that he mentioned, how aggressive testing, contact tracing, cooked meals, how the Indian state of Kerala flattened its coronavirus curve. Story that everybody should read. Find it in the Washington Post. My friend John Laxmi just shared it. I'm so grateful that he did. Rajiv says, commonplace business school inspirational talk full of truisms. I love that. A great show, fascinating guests. And Elm says he's following. Arlene saved the show by bringing that. Renee says a transformative hour. Thank you, Sree and Professor Wadhwa. And Lori says, another great episode with great stories. Thank you both. Great conversation. Folks, if you love this conversation and you want me to keep doing these, I have so many folks who are going to come and join us. The print editor of the New York Times is going to be here, Tom Jolly. You've got to come for that conversation. Some of you know that Neil Parekh and I went to his house to read the New York Times 2 years ago, but this year it's a different context. We're going to talk on this show about that. So I want to first thank our sponsor and tell everyone that we want you to be a sponsor. Maybe you know somebody, even if you have nothing to sell, you know a nonprofit you want to support. And here's an example. A third-party donor, an anonymous donor, has supported FrontlineFoodTrucks.com. They are doing incredible work that we are so grateful to be able to support. We want you to go and make a donation, please. FrontlineFoodTrucks.com is delivering donated food and beverages to New York City hospital staff 7 days a week, starting with NYU Langone in Manhattan and Brooklyn. Some of the food companies include La Colombe, Sweet Green, Chobani, Pipcorn Heirloom Snacks, Kind Bar, Blue Bottle Coffee, The Donut Pub, and Belgian Boys. And Ben Goldberg, the founder and president of the New York Food Trucks Association, is trying to raise enough funds to deliver food to all hospitals. So if you go and make a donation there, you're supporting three kinds of folks. You're supporting the food truck folks, you're supporting the hospital workers, and you're supporting this tiny little show that relies on your energy and your friendship. Thank you so much. And not a penny was taken away from the Frontline food trucks or from the hospital workers, because the money for this ad was donated by a third party. So maybe you don't have anything to sell, but maybe you want to wish someone a happy birthday, or you want to celebrate an anniversary, or celebrate a nonprofit that you love. Look how inexpensive these ads are. Sree at sree.net. I am so grateful to all of you who have supported the show. 32 days in a row, folks. We've been doing this 32 days. Is a long time, and I'm so grateful to everybody who's done that. I also want to tell you that we have 2 producers on the show, Rose Horowitz 31 on Twitter and Vandana_Menon, and I'm so proud of them and so lucky to work with them to make the show what it is today, and so grateful that they have joined me on this journey. So thank you all for being here. If you have suggestions for speakers, for themes, we've got so many great shows coming up. Next 3 nights, it's all going to be at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so that you can kind of set your clock 9 p.m. Eastern. Please join us. Among the shows, we're going to have a show just about the empty streets of New York. A wonderful photographer is going to be joining us and taking us on a journey through the empty streets of New York. We're going to do a conversation about immigration. We're going to talk to the print editor of the New York Times. We're going to talk to journalists who are sharing resources at this moment. So all of that's coming up in the days and weeks ahead. And I'm so excited about a conversation about language, and about the language of the crisis, and everything from PPE to the apex. Think about all the words that we have learned through this time together. We're going to talk about them with 3 different linguists who are going to come and help us understand this crisis in a different angle. We're not here to discuss the news, because the news is so troublesome, but we are here to learn from each other, to share ideas. I want to tell you that we had an incredible conversation just last week with Bill Ritter, and he came on my show last night just as a surprise guest. So if you go back and look at my Sunday Positivity show on YouTube, you can find that, and it was great to have him with us. We also did a great show that we call You Gotta Smile or You'll Cry, the humor show last Friday. We had Manisha Koirala, one of the great Bollywood stars, join us this past Saturday. So all kinds of conversations, so many things that I've been learning from everybody. We had Ambassador Sandeep Chakravarti with us, the Indian Consul General, and he shared some great ideas, and Lavina Melwani, journalist, helped ask questions. So all of this is to say thank you for your support. Thank you for your friendship. And let me just lean in here so I can tell you what this is. This is my QR code on WhatsApp. So if you have an iPhone right now, you can just use your phone and point at this, and you will not be added to a Facebook group. God knows there are enough Facebook groups. We're going to add you instead to a alert-only list, where I'll just alert you when we know our schedule and when we're live. So it's very low volume. There's no crazy aunts and uncles there. It's just alerts of when we are live. So hope you'll sign up for that. Please follow my YouTube channel. Please subscribe. SreenetNet is my YouTube channel. We'd love to have you there. And we're so grateful to everybody for their continued support of all my digital shenanigans. And thank you very much, everybody. Looking forward to being in touch with you. Please email me with ideas, comments, stories, anything you'd like to share. I'm so grateful to be here with all of you. This is 32 days in a row. In some ways, it's gone, by the way, touch my face. You're not supposed to touch your face, but it's gone so fast and so slow at the same time. 32 days of lockdown in New York. I promise to keep doing this until the lockdown is over, or until I get COVID-19. But we're all, I hope you are all safe, and good luck with everything. I wish you the very, very best. Thanks very much, everybody. So grateful. Bye. We'll see you 9 o'clock tomorrow, 9 p.m. Eastern, on Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Eastern, on Wednesday night. By the way, just very quickly, we are also having a great show on Wednesday morning, Wednesday, 9 a.m. I'm going to do my weekly conversation with Hong Kong University, and we're going to do a conversation with a great expert on how Asia and America have different approaches to the crisis in healthcare and other aspects of it. So please join us for that Wednesday. So see you Tuesday night at 9 p.m., Wednesday night at 9 p.m., and Wednesday morning at 9 p.m. if you're watching this live. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.